Hey there, money movers in training. Welcome back to another episode of the Do.Different.Better show, where we talk about wealth, wisdom, and money moves, making finance simple for everyday people. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, CEO and founder of Social Impact Now, Connective Institute, and managing director of the Integrated Capital Fund. Thanks so much for joining me today. I am so excited to bring on our second guest on the show, Ms. Juana Whitmore. She is a certified business strategist, accredited small business development consultant, certified financial education instructor, a doctoral candidate, and university professor who is passionate about designing and innovating business models for all types of companies. In addition to almost a 20-year career with Target Corporation in business analysis, architecture, and strategy consulting, she has advised hundreds of small firms and nonprofits to grow and scale. Luana's personal mission is to create parity for women and underestimated and underrepresented communities, helping them build wealth through entrepreneurship, education, and business development. Luana, welcome to the show. So glad to have you.
Yeah, I'm super happy to be here. Thank you for having me. I
Yes.
appreciate it.
And what's super exciting is she's just launched NextFemme Financial, a platform dedicated to helping women to manage both personal and business finances more effectively. So when I have guests on my show, I always start out with this question, because so much of what we talk about or don't talk about with money is actually, how did we actually get to how we think about money? So I always ask every guest to share their money story. So you can share your first memory of money, or the first time you realize money had some kind of influence.
Yeah, so my money story, I think, is very much like a lot of people. My parents were poor, and my parents ended up coming into money out of a lot of hard work and grit, right, on the part of my parents. But they never talked to us about money. And as a result, I had to learn everything that I learned. I didn't even know that it was something that we should be talking about, right? I had to learn everything that I learned through, like really hard lessons, right? Filing for bankruptcy a couple of times, really just struggling to understand why I was spending money that I didn't have. And why I didn't know how to save or how much, or even that, when you're young in your 20s, like retire. What is that? Retirement? What are you talking about? I'm going to be 25 forever. But that's not the case. And so it wasn't until, I had a child and I kind of got into a career and I wasn't really thinking and managing my money the way I wanted to, that I started to say, okay, I got to get a handle on this. And it ended up working out. I was able to buy a house, in my 30s and, all of that stuff. But I still really didn't understand how our financial systems work. It's one thing to understand money comes in, you spend or save, money goes out. But it's another thing to understand the whole ecosystem of money, why you should understand what the markets are doing, why you should understand inflation and interest and all of these things, and why it's really super important to you. So, when you ask me what my first memory of money is, it really is getting that credit card as a freshman in college. And again, at that time, my parents hadn't been to college. Now they're both college graduates. My dad's a doctor now. But I was the first person to actually go to college in my family. And so they didn't know to tell me that when I get to campus, you're going to be inundated with about 500 credit card applications, and it's easy to get. And so my first memory really is getting that card, spending with wild abandon, and then paying, $20 a month and never paying it off. Right. And then eventually having that snowball into what now seems insignificant, at $5,000 worth of debt. And I probably could have worked my way out of it, but I decided to, but no one was around to tell me that. And the bankruptcy court and the bankruptcy lawyer doesn't get any money if I don't file bankruptcy. So, so he's not telling me, you don't need to do that. Here's the way for you to do better. You can pay this off and not have this stain on your financial record. So that really is my very first real concrete example or part of my money story that started hell. So
I love that. And it's so funny. So in the first episode, I talked about my story and I shared a similar story of,
oh, did you?
oh no, it's same. It was not even just the credit cards. It was like, oh, well, I have checks, right? There's still money in like, I've got checks. And I don't know if you remember the cartoon Kathy. There's literally is a cartoon where she's like, what do you mean? Like, I have checks. Like, there's still money because I have checks still.
That's funny. Yeah. Right. But because, I mean, I even think about how worse off our kids would be, right? Because even when I was a kid, I remember in home ec class, we learned a lot of things. Now, this is in the 70s, 70s and 80s. Okay, let's just be clear about this. But we learned how to cook. We had like in high school home ec, we had mock weddings, like where girls dressed up in wedding dresses and the guys, I mean, like the whole thing.
Wow.
Crazy. But the one thing we did have was we also learned how to do a budget. We learned how to budget in home ec, and that doesn't even exist anymore. My daughter didn't learn that.
No.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't either. And I don't know if that's because I was in California, I was in a Catholic school. I don't know what the situation was, but I was very pissed off because like I'm like, why it seems similar. I talk about how, we grew up very housing insecure. My stepfather was an alcoholic turned drug addict, and there was always this struggle. And never knowing like what was going to be happening at any given moment, never knowing where we're going to be evicted. We had been evicted a few times, and I'm living in a small community, like having the embarrassment of just having that embarrassment because everybody knows what's going on at your house, right? Mm-hmm. And the only other star that I saw was my grandmother, which was this total juxtaposition. She was single, she worked, and she was all about like, I live to make this money to make myself happy. So she would walk around. She's like, I remember one time she bought $150 pair of parachute pants. Like, right? First of all, parachute pants, go look it up. If you don't know what it is, go look it up. They were the jam. They were the thing. My grandmother had a pair of, and I remember my mom and my grandmother arguing because my mom thought that was such an exorbitant amount of money to spend on a pair of pants. And my grandmother was like, this is what I work for. Stay in my business. Mm-hmm. And so that was like the juxtaposition that I had with the conversation of money of like this person who's very, I wouldn't say carefree, but like very much like I work so that I can buy things that I want. And this deficit in my house of like, there's never enough. There's never going to be enough. We don't know when the next dollar is coming. Like this constant fear. And it was just this like kind of like schizophrenic, like what, where. And so I had to figure out, to your point, through my own hard mistakes, of a balance, right? No, it's not about like hedonism and like serving every pleasure that I have at every moment, but it's also like, there's more money that's coming. And like, I can create a pathway to know that more money is coming instead of always wondering if more money is coming.
Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the biggest differences between our upbringing, right? Is, my parents have never, even in their kind of general teachings of us, there was never conversation of scarcity. And even though I know in the early days when I was too young to even, remember, 2, 3, there definitely was scarcity, right. But it's an interesting, it does an interesting thing to your brain to always live in not enough, and to have that be the predominant conversation versus how do we get enough? How do we get more? Versus, so it's an interesting thing that kind of rewires the brain, right? And how you think about money and other things, right?
And the possibility of getting more. Like there's the possibility to get more, and I can make it so that I don't ever go without, right? That whole notion, right? That I have agency in what happens to me, and that can be dictated, right? Yes, I love that. So, we're seeing more and more people take control of their finances in new ways. And so, why was launching NextFemme Financial so important to you? And why is now the perfect time for this platform?
Yeah, so as you mentioned in my introduction, I've helped, supported hundreds of entrepreneurs, and almost universally, when we get to the point of money, things happen. So we can talk about the brand and the name of the company and the customers and all the cool things. Oh, I like that font and I like that blue, right? Like all of those things are the exciting part of entrepreneurship. But the truth is, right, and we can talk about the product or service that they're delivering with great passion and excitement, right? But the truth is that entrepreneurship is not about the delivery of the service or the product. It's about the running of the business. And at the core of the running of the business is the financial part, right? Now, almost universally, when we get to the money part, creating a budget, doing a forecast, understanding how many of the thing you want to sell you're going to sell, people were recoiling. They were dropping out completely. They were becoming, kind of distant, and it's hard to track them down. It was almost universally happening across the board. And so when I started to talk to people about, well, what's happening, because this is even less math than logic, right? So let's really talk about what's happening. Because if you can add, multiply, subtract, and divide, you got this. This is it, right? But people would talk about, I have fear of math, math anxiety. I was never good at math. What's interesting about that statement is that I remember from my daughter, who's now 28, she actually was good at math. And at one year, she determined that she wasn't. And I kept asking her, who told you this? Someone had to tell you this because you were good at it. And so I think that there's, people are internalizing things. I think some things are being put on people that aren't fair, right? In terms of whether or not they're good at something. And then they internalize it and they move on with what they think is now the truth. But for whatever reason, people were having a hard time. And then I started to, kind of research and figure out what might some of the reasons be. And when I started asking people tell me about your personal finances. How do you manage those? Do you have a budget? What's your credit score, right? And this is after I've built rapport and trust, right? And again, for all those people that were having problem with the business money, they were having problems in their personal. 100% of the time. Mm-hmm. They weren't happy with their credit score. They weren't happy with the amount of savings they had. They didn't have enough to do what they wanted to do, including enough money to put back into the business. And then looking at the research absolutely supported that. That people who do better with their personal finances do better with their business finances. And if they do better there, then they have more successful businesses. It's like a three-way correlation, right? I'm going to call it the menage a trois at this point, right? These three things are absolutely correlated. And so if we can fix this root cause, right, we can help more women have successful businesses, which is really my ultimate goal. And so right now it's important because unlike any other time in history, people are not only inundated with the things that make you desire to buy, that consumer stuff, but you're also inundated all 24/7 with wrong information, right? Invest in this. This is how you're going to get rich quick. This is how you can start a business that's going to make you $1 million. It's all bull, right? And so how do I get the right information to women entrepreneurs so that they can do better? That's the whole point.
I love that. I love that. And you and I have talked about this several times on stages that we've shared of like even thinking about how do you manage your financial mobility? Okay, now that you've gotten that raise, you don't go out and spend more. What can you do? Can you live the way you were living before? Because clearly that was working. And now take this as an opportunity to leverage investment, buy, an investment property or something else, right? So really thinking about how how do we do that? But also the other conversation of, how people are getting money, especially we saw through COVID, money was being thrown at people. And to your point, they didn't know what to do with it. And we keep equating sort of like this, like you've been left at a financial system, right? On purpose, by design or whatever, but we're going to give you a whole bunch of money, but it would be patriarchal or colonistic for us to tell you like how to manage that money.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just like,
yeah, we see that at that with a smaller scale like that, right? In terms of the government giving the checks, right? The rebate checks or whatever I can't remember what they were, right? During COVID, but also on the larger scale in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, and we can really speak here in Minnesota, where entrepreneurs are getting tens of thousands, in some cases hundreds of thousands of dollars to start or grow businesses. Yet we never asked how good are you at managing money, and we don't actually, almost, to your point, we don't mandate that you have to take a class that helps you understand how to do this once you get this big influx of money. So it is interesting.
Yeah. Well, we're going to end up this segment here. We've been talking with Juana Whitmore of NextFemme Financial, founder and CEO. And I'm so excited. There will be a promo code for those of you who are interested in getting on the platform. We'll have that scrolling on the screen in our next segment. So make sure you come back and you join us after the break, where I show you how to do different better with NextFemme Financial. Welcome back to the Do Different Better show. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we have a very special guest in the house, Miss Juana Whitmore, founder and CEO of NextFemme Financial. So great to have you on the show, Juana.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So now we spent the first part of the episode unpacking your money story, and then we also talked about like why now, why NextFemme now. Now let's shift a little bit of like, we know that women, especially minority women, have often been overlooked and under resourced by traditional financial services, right? I believe one of my favorite pictures is in 2018, I think it was Vogue magazine did a cover with all 34 Black women founders who had raised over $1 million in venture funding since 2019. So that's like a 11 year period. Only 34 Black women had raised over $1 million in venture capital. How does NextFemme help break down these barriers, and what unique resources are you offering that other platforms aren't?
So what's interesting is that, while I'm not working to break down those barriers, what I am doing is recognizing that they exist and making it so that women can be self-empowered. Right. So is there a way for us to depend less on these systems that, have historically excluded us? Yes, there absolutely is a way for us to do that. And so what's fascinating, sad, interesting, however you want to frame this, is that, while the United States financial system really started in about 1780, women were historically excluded from that for 200 years. And so for us to really recognize the challenges from that, it wasn't until 1974. I was already born. You were already born. Our mothers were entering the financial systems, right? They could not get a bank account or anything like that on their own until that time. And you can bet there was a lag in practice versus law. So I think about, my mother was unable to get a loan on her own without a signature from her husband or her daddy. I mean, that is wild. How crazy is that, right? And so I think we need to recognize that while those things happen, they're no longer necessarily happening today in America. There's residual effects of that. Mm-hmm. Also, women typically don't talk about money amongst themselves, nor do they talk about it within their families. Like, it's less common for a dad or a mom to talk about money with a daughter in a family. You talked about how much men raise, particularly in venture capital, they raise 50 times more than women. Less than 3% of all venture capital goes to women. And it's so interesting. One study that I read actually talked about it's less gender than it is gender acting. So meaning that if there's any feminine outward appearance or speech or talk, right, that those people are less likely to get funding in the VC world. And so even if there's a male who presents more as a woman or has more woman kind of gender, things. Thank you. They are less likely to get funded as well. So I thought that was a fascinating study. Also, I think women just have different circumstances. More women are responsible for more things, meaning bringing in money, taking care of the kids, like having the primary kid responsibility and having the primary home responsibilities, right? And so those things give you less time to pursue financial things than maybe if you were a man. Also, women outlive men. And so therefore they've got to save more to last longer in their retirement than men do. And a lot of people don't address that. They really are thinking of like total life expectancy when you should think about specifically how long you should live. And as a woman, you probably will live longer. And then as in the VC world where women get less money, women just in general earn less. Even the people who aren't entrepreneurs, right, who are employees, earn less, way less over their lifetime. So they've got, if they earn less, they have less to save for the future. So all of these things kind of compound to make situation for women different. And then we add on the entrepreneurship piece to this, where as an entrepreneur, your money is like this. It's up and down. It's not, you're not getting paid the same amount every 2 weeks.
It's not a paycheck.
Right. You may not have insurance. You may not have all of these things as an entrepreneur. And so that makes things even more complicated when you may make $10,000 one month and $3,000 the next month. How do you manage that? So,
especially if you have, like we talked about in the first segment, these bad money tapes. I like to call them money tapes that play in your head. But also then you lay on top of everything you talked about, culture, right? And we know that there are cultures that it's the first girl's responsibility to take care of the parents. It's, if any of the parents get sick, it's the girl's responsibility to take care of the parents. They might be the only girl. And yes, the default is that person is going to take care of all the things. And so and culture is such a harder thing to break because that's a norm that has to be broken within this community that you're in. And so how can what are the different ways to be able to like maneuver that, and financial security being one of those ways? Because then you can be like, I can hire somebody. It's like, if not to hire somebody to do the caretaking, because that's culturally inappropriate, to hire somebody to clean my house, because I can't be in right. I can't be in two places at once.
Yeah, for sure. And while a lot of people think money is the root of all evil, if you have the right mindset, it is the key to your freedom. It is the key to you being able to spend your time the way you want to spend it. And when I think about, I hope I'm not kind of jumping ahead here, but when I think about while a lot of the program are the technical aspects of managing money. Money comes in, there's a budget, there's this, that we actually don't even get to that at NextFemme until like module 3 or 4, because the first almost 1/3 of the program is about what's going on in your head, right? How do we get you to understand why you spend the way you spend, why you save the way you save, why you invest the way you invest? And then my mantra is kind of know thyself. When you know yourself, there's a freedom in that, right? You also are able to create boundaries. We will teach you how to uncover what your core values are so that you can spend in accordance with your core values. For example, if we determine that your core values are family experiences, and then you go over here and you buy a $50,000 car, is that in alignment with what you said your core values are? And so once we understand who you are, what your values are, you can start to create a plan that allows you to live that life, not someone else's life, not the life you're seeing on TikTok or on Instagram, but the life you want to live the way your grandmother did, right? Because she is that you said it was your grandmother, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, she bought the stuff that she wanted to buy because she knew what her values were, and she provided herself a path to freedom to be able to do that. And so that's what I want for other people, right? Yep.
Yeah. She loved Prince. That was like her one thing. She's like, she wanted she even wanted a red Corvette. She had a red RX-7, so that was close enough for her.
Oh yeah. Well, she would have been over the moon with the Prince house that just opened up on Airbnb.
Oh, I
Right.
know. I saw it. That's amazing. But I love what you're saying because, in our work and supporting entrepreneurs, it's that same kind of thing. It's like, we've got to get under the hood. What's the mindset? Because once we crack that egg, then we can be like, okay, what I like to say is, I don't want things to happen to you. If you are
Yes.
not clear about your core values, you're not clear about your purpose, you're not clear about your mission, you're not clear about what it is you want, then things happen to you. And my thing is, I don't care that you make decisions, but know that you're making a bad decision. You're like, no, I know what I'm doing. And I
Right.
take the consequences of that.
But I've thought about it strategically. And once you know yourself, once you have your values, once you have your purpose and your mission, it becomes easy to say no,
Yes.
right? No. And I think I get criticized for saying no.
Well, that's where you and I are friends.
I've got like blinders on. And as things come in, I measure those things against who I am, what my companies are meant to be doing, why I'm here, what my values are. And if it doesn't match up, I have to say no. I mean, it's an easy decision.
Well, and that's where you and I are similar, right? Because I get criticized too. It was just like, she don't go nowhere. She don't talk to nobody. I'm like, listen, I am just very clear
Yeah.
about what I'm going to right swipe and left swipe on, because here's the thing. And this brings me to another question around, especially as people of color, first Americans, you grow up with this celebration of hustle culture. You grow up with this celebration of work, 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 work. And it's not okay to actually take a vacation. It's not okay to dive into something pleasurable that's completely for you. I remember my last relationship, I was with a first American, and when we were going through a major life decision, and I was like, no, I don't want to do that. He's like, well, you're being selfish. And my response to him was like, absolutely. Like, I think he thought it was going to be like a shame thing. And I said, yeah, I'm being selfish. 100%.
Exactly, because if I do what I want, I can better help other people do what they want, right? And but if I'm struggling, we can't all. I'm no good to anybody if my brain is full of me doing things that that are not in alignment with who I am. And it's not about doing things that you don't want to do. I think that we got to kind of make that clear, because when you run a business, whatever you do, there are things that you have to do to get to your ultimate goal. This is strategy, right? But when you know yourself, you're able to say no to the things that you don't want to do that are not in alignment to your ultimate goals, your ultimate strategy. Yep.
Right, because they're a distraction. And I talk about this with founders of, is this opportunity an opportunity, or is this a test? Because sometimes you get tested to be like, to test your resolve on, are you going to stay on the track that you said you wanted to be in, or has the track changed? It is fine that the track has changed, but know that the track has changed. Don't change it because you were you weren't paying attention to like what was happening in your body. You weren't paying attention to, oh, this thing really is in alignment where I said I wanted to go, or you weren't clear about where you wanted to go. But like, I always ask founders, I'm like, let's really think about this. Is this an opportunity or is it a test? Because an opportunity is going to be in alignment with where you're trying to go. Yep. A test is a distraction, which will take you off your path and take suck time, suck resources, human capital, financial capital, social capital to go do some stuff that wasn't even in the plan.
Right, exactly. And it is always obvious within the first meeting when you've encountered that person, because it's not, you're not clear on what it is that their business does. because it does so many different things. They got a laundry list of goals that are not at all connected, right? Meaning they're not all working towards this one endpoint. And so it's really quickly evident when you're meeting with entrepreneurs who are not grounded in who they are and their values, because they're typically all over the place.
Exactly. Well, we're going to wrap up this segment. We've got one more segment to go. We are on Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen. We have Juana Whitmore here, CEO and founder of NextFemme Financial. We have just been talking about just the different money stories that we are living with, how we are maybe getting in our own way, and how we really need to get clear about who we are, know thyself, where we're going. And that actually helps you in grounding your financial future and unpacking some of the stuff to get to where you need to go to actually make some really good solid investments, and knowing how to better run your business. When we come back from the break, we're going to be sliding into really understanding more about what is going to be offered on NextFemme Financial, but also really understanding what are the first steps you can take around building your financial confidence. So I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, on Do Different Better. I will see you after the break. Isn't I have cool music? Welcome back, beautiful people. This is Do Different Better. I'm your host, Elaine Rasmussen, and we have the star-studded Juana Whitmore, founder and CEO of NextFemme Financial, one of my favorite humans in the entire world. So I'm so excited to have her on her show as she's launching this new venture. So we've been spending a lot of time talking about sort of what have been the challenges of really understanding the connection between your personal finances and your business finances. And if you don't have a really great grasp or understanding of your personal finances, all of those bad habits and bad tapes will show up in your business finances. So, but let's take it back a little bit further, and let's go a little bit back to the beginning of so many women feel overwhelmed and anxious about managing both their personal and financial finances. What would you offer as first steps that they can take to start really building their financial confidence?
Yeah, so I think that there are a few things. The first thing we talked about the last segment, which is knowing yourself, understanding what your values are, who you are, what's your mission in life, what is your money story. I call it your money autobiography, right? And really getting rooted in all of those things. From there, if you skip that part, when you do the thing that everyone tells you to do, which is here's a budget spreadsheet, you will make the same mistakes that you always made because you didn't address this first, right? Another thing is to make sure that you've got the right community of people around you, right? A community of people with whom you are not afraid to discuss money and openly talk about money, your struggles, your successes. What's that investment that you just made, right? Really making it part of normal conversation. We don't do that, and we really need to do that. And so one of the great things about NextFemme is that not only do we address that mental piece, that mental block, but we also address the community piece, right? So meaning there's an online community of people who are doing the same thing you're doing, going through the same thing you're going. They're all entrepreneurs, and they're all trying to fix their finances so that they can have stronger businesses. And then we're going to talk about money often, all the time, and how you manage it. And then also there's having kind of these one-on-one peer pieces that we also help facilitate. Who is that one person? You've got a community of people, you guys are talking generally. Who's that one person that you're going to open it all up to, right? That you are going, and you guys are in a similar place, and you're going to really talk about your money. And then who's that expert? Whether it's a coach or a consultant or whatever, who's that expert when you're stuck and your community can't help, that you can go to and say, all right, I need this, this, and this, and it's a trusted person. So I think those are some of the first ways that women can start to build confidence. And part of that is because you're not alone.
Right.
Realizing that you're not alone helps build confidence, right? Also, I think having a program that allows you to spend your money the way you do, that doesn't dictate how you spend the money. I'm not telling you that you can't buy that $50,000 car. I'm not I have no stake in that game.
Right. You're like, I don't care.
I have no horse in that race. I have no stake in that game. But what I'm going to tell you is that if depending on where your salary is, where your money is coming in from your businesses, you can't do all the things. So I'm going to ask you to make some decisions based on your values. And if your value is to drive the newest, best, and most expensive car, then that's what we need to work into your budget.
Exactly.
Period. Right?
Exactly.
If that's your value, then that's what you need to do. But knowing most of us in the world can't do it all. And so we've got to make sure we've got to make some decisions, right? Other ways I think that women can build confidence is having a program that has longevity. Mm-hmm. It's not enough, again, to give a spreadsheet and be like, all right, cool, good luck to you. Put the numbers in the cells. It has to be something that's constantly reinforced over a long period of time, right? And so the NextFemme program has a lot of components to it, and it takes a while to get through them all, assuming that you do them well. I also think we, generally speaking, need to move away from the term financial literacy. I hate that term for a few reasons. First of all, literacy assumes kind of a rudimentary level of understanding, right?
Yes.
It assumes a juvenile level of understanding. And literacy is just the knowing.
Yes.
I just know. Yes. I like financial acumen better because acumen means not only do I know, but I have the skills and the tools to execute.
Yes.
I implement it. And this is an example that I like to use is, I'm fat. I'm a big girl. I've been fat, and it got worse during the pandemic. You can look at me, you see I'm not skinny. But the truth is, I could probably write a book on weight loss because I'm that literate in what it takes to lose weight.
Right.
But I don't have the acumen. Something here hasn't clicked yet. Right. That will make me have the acumen, get the right tools and things that work for me to be able to implement.
Right.
And to me, that's the difference between being literate and having the acumen. Those are the two things that I really want us to start to move away from. Being literate. A lot of people are literate in a lot of things, but it doesn't mean that they can actually execute. So that's the difference.
I love that. And you and I have talked about this in the past. And I talk about what I'm doing is wealth education, right? Mm-hmm. Because that is I agree with you 100% of and I feel like literacy has also been hijacked and mm-hmm. co-opted to, yes, it's I can show you how to balance a checkbook, but to your point about acumen, one, do you know how often to do it? Do you know why you should be doing it? Do you know how it's going to work for you? Because even I've learned in my lifetime, budgeting looks different at different points in my life. How I manage my budget looks different at different times in my life. When I was younger and I didn't spend a lot of money because I was going to school, looking at a budget, I didn't need to do that often. When I first had my child, I was like, listen, I need to look at this every week. I need to, what's happening?
Yep. Yep.
And so, but then to the point of, and what we talked about earlier about being left out of the financial system, no one has talked about. I remember when I first worked at Nordstrom and I got a 401k, the memory of even them saying oh, there's a 401k was a blip in my memory. Right. And so then no one said to me, no, everyone was saying, yeah, put in the full match contribution. I'm like, I don't know what that means.
No.
I come from a house that doesn't have a bank account.
Right. And it's not your employer's job to educate you.
Right.
And I think that's we've got the disconnect, right? So you're being offered things that are super beneficial. I mean, that 401k match, that is free money. I remember my mom worked for a company that had 20% match. She put in 20% of her paycheck. Seriously, that is free money. But unless you understand what the instrument is, how it plays in the long term of your life, how that 20% could grow over time, yes. If you just let it even just sit there, yes. Right, in the investment, because no one's explained any of that. And again, that comes with an understanding of the larger financial system. It doesn't mean 401k, it's just a bunch of numbers and letters. What does it mean? And what it means, and depending on where you are in your life, what it means is that someone's asking me to give my money and put it into this thing and I can't get it out without a lot of penalties.
Right. To my benefit, right?
Right. But depending on where you are here and what your actual situation is, that's how you could hear that. Wait, you want me to put 10% of my income over here and I can't get to it? And if I need to get to it, you're going to charge me 15, 20% on my money? Okay. That's what that sounds like. And so because we haven't talked about it, we haven't put that scenario into the bigger picture, people won't get it.
And that's why that was literally the reason why I started this show. I'm like, I want wealth education to be more accessible, because this isn't rocket science. Is it a lot of complicated moves? Maybe, but to your point earlier, and I know you and I talk about this all the time, it's addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's what this is. And I know you know how to do that because I know you calculated that discount on them shoes.
Exactly.
Right. I know you know how to do that. So, but this whole thing of wealth education of like, and okay, you have this 401k. Hey, there is no penalty if you want to buy a house. There is no penalty if you want to go take yourself back to school so you can get a job paying you more, $20,000 more a year. So when does it make sense to take it out and deal with any potential penalties? Because you're actually investing in yourself that will have an exponential. Now you're going to have more money to put into the 401k as a result of you getting that education. So to your point of like, I think what I call financial activists like you and like me, of like, no, we're shining the light. We're like opening what do they call that in a camera? Like the vector, the aperture to be able to like, no, let's go wider so you can see the whole picture and see what your place is. You don't have to be in all the places. And I tell people on the show, I'm not looking for you to be finance experts. What I want you to do is take the thing that you heard that applies to you and activate you on that thing. That's what I want you to do. And everything I talk about is not going to be you should not be activated by everything I say.
No, because you'll be all over the place, like those entrepreneurs we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
I think it's, the beautiful thing about this journey is that it looks, to your point, it looks differently for everyone. It looks different for everyone. And you can create the plan that fits you, who you are, the life you want, those kinds of things. I think one of the other things that we do in the program that's super important is, while we teach you how to spend, how to decide how to spend for yourself, how to decide how to save for yourself, but we also teach you how to earn more money, right? So those are the kind of the three big components: save, spend, earn. And if you can master those, then you'll be pretty good.
Oh, that's amazing. So as we're kind of leading into sliding into home here, what is your vision for the future of NextFemme Financial?
Well, first I have to launch the whole program, which is set to launch on November 1st of 2024. What's fascinating is that even though the online pieces of it haven't launched, I'm already doing courses in person. So there's like a live NextFemme experience, and then there's the online experience, and so I'm doing both, which is great. But when I think about in the future of it, it really is about creating this space where women can not only learn about their personal finances, but could potentially get some support with their business finances, meaning funding, whether it be loans or grants or equity funding, those kinds of things, trying to figure out how this becomes like this one-stop shop for women as they are on their money journey, both personally and professionally, is really what I'm goaling myself to think about.
I love that. Well, that's it for today's episode of the Do Different Better show with your host, Elaine Rasmussen. I want to thank my guest, Miss Juana Whitmore, founder and CEO of NextFemme Financial. Thank you so much for being on the show. We'd love to have you back, particularly to talk about the successes, because I know that there will be. And I'm just so super pumped that you are coming out with this. It's such a great tool. I think between our show and NextFemme, I think we're really going to be exponentially getting people to really reimagineer their financial future, which is something that's important to me. So for all of you listening, I'm so excited to have you here. Thank you so much for tuning in. We hope to see you next week. We're going to be, I'm not exactly sure what I'm talking about next week, but it's going to be great. It's going to be action-packed, always with practical tips and resources on getting you started or moving forward on your financial journey. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. And if you're loving what you're hearing, please share with your friends. Let me know what you think of the show. We love comments. Tell us how we helped you. And if there's a money or finance question that you have, or if there's somebody you want me to interview, hit me up on LinkedIn or Instagram at Do Better with Elaine. Until next time, stay empowered, stay focused, and I will see you next week when I show you how to do different better.